I was born in the early 80s, and so I remember a time, and I'm sure a lot of people say this, but I remember a time when there weren't cell phones, right?
Right.
So there's this kind of push and pull between how the technology not only affects daily life, but also like the actual act of filmmaking. So like my first, in the early 2000s when I'm in college, I mean, I remember giving an assignment to a teacher on a VHS tape.
Mm.
And then I learned how to make movies with mini DV tapes.
Yeah.
Which is sort of an analog digital combo.
Yeah.
And so I've been sort of cognizant of all of these technology changes, but also kind of holding on, being sort of tethered to the older media, because to me, I'm interested in what that media kind of, how it tells a story.
Yeah.
I'm kind of considered the family archivist in my family, and my grandparents, specifically on my dad's side, saved everything, like absolutely everything. And so when they passed away, I was sort of put in charge of kind of looking at everything. So all of the photographs, all of the letters, all of the old film, like, you know, it's just interesting to look at those things and be able to reflect on a life and get the meaning from that, right? It helps you kind of create a picture of who someone was and who they will be when they're gone, you know, once they're gone. So I have this kind of like, this idea that, you know, like the books that you have, the CDs that you own, the newspapers that you read, like all of these things tell a story.
Yeah.
And so there's a show that I had at the West End Gallery in the Aronoff a few years ago. It was kind of my first big solo show, and it was called What Makes a Life. And what I did was I took an inventory of all of the physical media that I own. Like every book that I own.
Wow, yeah.
Every literally like CD or record, every single thing that I owned, I kind of made a list of, because to me that tells a story in that moment of who I am and how I got to where I am.
Yeah.
Right? When you listen to a certain song, when you read a book, when you watch a movie, like it kind of like it gets absorbed into your bones, whether it was like influential or not. It's just sort of in our bodies.
Right.
And the reason I did that is because I felt a tension between this new idea of streaming. So right now there's sort of no record of what we're watching and consuming.
Right.
There's no record. It's just, it goes into our body, and there's no like, unless you buy the book or have the physical part. So it's like the physical versus the digital. Like there's a tension there that I wanted to explore. Because I think that if you can't sort of, not that you can't track, but if you can't recollect on what people are reading and watching and consuming, it sort of changes the story society's telling. And then you bring in AI. Right. And at the moment, 5-6 years ago when I had this show, I didn't know the term AI and sort of what it was, and it's sort of gaining steam, obviously. Right. So I used the terminology algorithm. So these algorithms are changing the media that we're consuming. They're changing critical thought. They're changing how we think, right? Yeah. And I was uncomfortable with that. So that's what that show to me was about. All the different pieces were this idea, this tension between the analog and the digital, and then you throw in there, okay, how do you make art from that, right? Yeah. So, for instance, I did a piece that my grandfather had taken some pictures, 35 millimeter pictures, and there were some slides, and they were double exposures. So they were images that actually never were real in real life, because in the processing of them, they were like, it's like a tree here and a flower here, and somehow that when he took those images, they got layered. Right. So it's an image that actually never existed, right? So I'm starting with this physical slide, I scan it, and then what happens to that slide? What happens to that image that never existed? So then I end up recording it on a VHS tape, and then I record it again, and I record it again, and I record it again, and all of a sudden the image disappears, right? So through this process of analog, but like also like constructed degradation of the image, I'm taking as something that never actually even existed, even though I had it in my hand, the slide.
Yeah, right.
And then I'm putting it through this process of this kind of, change, how the technology, the hardware can kind of change something slowly. And then eventually it just becomes, after, I think it's like an hour, it's just lines on a screen.
Yeah.
It's just gone.
That's wild.
Yeah. So like I'm always kind of fascinated by that, the tension, like you're saying, between the digital and the analog. I don't know. It comes out in different ways in all my work, but that's just one example.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I mean, what you're saying about streaming, I mean, I have like this love-hate relationship with streaming, and I'm thinking like specifically music, but also, like Netflix and all the streaming services there, where, I was listening to all this different music and discovering it, 10 years ago when I didn't have any money, but I could afford a streaming service. And now that I've my career's picked up steam and I have a little more money, I'm going back and I'm buying like the records of the albums that I fell in love with, even if I don't listen to it anymore. And now it's like anytime I travel or anytime, I discover something that like blows my mind, it's like, okay, I need a physical copy of this. And especially now we don't have to comment on the state of affairs in the world and at the end of or middle of March 2025, but I'm kind of seeing it as like, this is like, if I lose access to the internet, if I lose access to power, well, power is like its own thing, but if I lose access to these different things in some way, at least I have a physical copy of it. I mean, it's kind of like building out my own archive, like what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And because if everything is streaming and everything is not tangible, like, I don't know, like does it exist? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, like, what's interesting too is being on your podcast, thinking about music. Like I had a very good friend in undergrad, Heather Radke. She's an incredible writer. She wrote about music. And I remember asking her once about her big project. She was doing something about the history of folk music.
Yeah.
And I remember her commenting like, how do you write about something that is actually not, it's like so abstract and ephemeral.
Yeah.
It's like the music, the sound is like there and then it's gone. But it's affected culture so much and affected history so much. Like there's the documentation of it and the remnants of it in people's lived experience. But really, can you touch music?
Right.
No, and so I just remember that really resonated with me when she told me that, because it's very similar to film.
Yeah.
And I think my changing attitudes towards filmmaking and video making and the digital part of it, really, it is that sort of wanting to hold something and wanting to kind of feel something, because it's so, the light is on and then the light is off and then that's it, right? So it's like, it's not an object that you hold or that you can kind of see, and that can be sort of frustrating to me. I've never been an object maker. I went to grad school at the Art Institute in Chicago. I can't draw or paint. I've never been a fine artist. So my art is really in pushing invisible buttons.
Yeah.
That's what I do. But as I get older, there's a coldness to that. And maybe that has to do with me, ties into the journey of me becoming a mom and wanting to hold something. And that my latest film, which is called This Is a Movie, there's probably the most impactful line for me that is in there that I wrote was, it's like, this is about looking at something flat when you want to hold something round. Right. So it's almost like the inability of the medium to really capture what I want it to right now is, I'm a little bit disappointed in filmmaking and video making and I think it actually has to do with the technology, and that kind of ties into this project of failed technology. So I've had a lot of hard drives fail over the last couple years, and that's really hard to process. I'm mourning these projects and this footage and these things that I put a lot of time and effort and love into, and they're just gone. And it's just, I don't even know how to wrap my head around it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Micromaker by Loose Leaf Transmissions. We hope you enjoyed this brief glimpse into the inner workings of the creative life. If this resonated with you, be sure to check out the full conversation on Music Maker with Tyler Kline, a podcast exploring craft and process, philosophy and inspiration, and the honest, often messy parts of being an artist, creative uncertainty, purpose and identity, and resilience. You can find Music Maker wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting musicmakerpodcast.com.